and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you. All of you over tube. Hope you're well today. Hope you're feeling grand. All smile in your world. Had a bit of a switcheroo around in here, as you can probably tell. But anyway, yes, welcome to another Q&A Wednesday, everybody. Question 1 today. Do you think Jimi Hendrix adjusted his string height or intonation because he played right-handed guitar, left-handed? Yes. There's a few little rare pictures of Jimmy where you can see other people messing around with his guitars, and I think Jimmy would have known what he was doing with his guitar, to be honest with you. He would have known how to kind of like mess and tweak with it. Oddly enough, I read an article a couple of years ago about his black Strat, his favourite one, the black one with a maple neck, big headstock. He played at the Isle of Wight Festival. That one, the low E string didn't have a screw. The low E string saddle, sorry, didn't have a screw or a spring on it. It was just the saddle. I don't know how that worked, but it did. But it was in the case, apparently. These two guys got to see it. No one knows where it is now, actually, oddly enough. But it was in the case, but he didn't have it on, which is very, very weird. So he just had the saddle there and was just moving it about. But yeah, I can imagine Jimmy adjusted his guitars quite... I wouldn't say quite regular. Meet my own hair again. I always end up with hair in my mouth. Anyway, yeah, I would say Jimmy messed around with it. I mean, if you look at Woodstock, Jimmy never really had a particularly massively high action on his guitar, and Jimmy always uses really light strings as well. His E, A, and D strings were modern day gauge 8s. There were a 38. He had a 38 as a low E string. And his G, B, and E strings were a 9 set. So the high E string was a 9. But I think, to be honest with you, at Woodstock he's using 8s. They look like a whole 8 set. Because if you look really closely, the high strings are really, really thin. So I reckon Jimmy messed and tinkered. You know, he was one of those people. I think he would mess around a lot and he would just, you know, tweak and see what worked, you know. And I think he knew what he wanted from a guitar, especially a Strat. He knew what he wanted, so he probably knew how to do it. And he also had people to do it for him as well and mess around. So, yes, yeah, I reckon Jimmy would adjust his string height and intonation all the time and just mess around in general, really. So, you also asked, where do you usually run your volume for playing Jimi Hendrix? It's hard to say because it varies on your setup, really. Jimmy would be on his volume control a lot of the time. If you watch him, like Woodstock and the Isle of Wight Festival are probably the best footage to watch him and really analyse what he's doing, because you can really see what he's doing and when he's doing it. But Jimmy would ride his volume control a lot. The tones, he wouldn't really use his tones a great deal. You don't really see him messing around with the tones. You see him every now and again turning them up, but I think it's because he knocked them with his right arm. Well, his left arm, sorry. I think it's because he knocked them and he's just turning them back up to full. But you see him mess around with his volume a lot. With his fuzz pedal on or off. It varies. But he does mess around with his volume a lot. And the selector switch as well, between the bridge and neck pickup mainly most of the time. But what I normally do for running Jimi Hendrix, if I'm running Jimi Hendrix stuff, what I'll do is I'll normally have a fuzz pedal on all the time. So it's on full tilt all the time. And then just, especially if it's one of those fuzz pedals that as you roll the volume down, it cleans up, which is kind of mega important. Like the Electro Harmonix double muffler, my favourite fuzz pedal, it does that really nicely. So what I do normally is kind of like, for clean stuff it's normally about 3. For kind of like Purple Haze-ish intro it's normally about 6 or 7, and then for that solos and Star Spangled Banner-ness it's normally around 10. But it varies, it depends what you're doing. I mean, you can get away with doing Jimi Hendrix by running all your volumes and your tones on 10 and just using pedals for different gain stages. So you can kind of like run your whole guitar on 10 and say, like, for instance, you're doing the intro to Long Watchtower, have like a fairly cleanish, broken up cleanish kind of sound for the intro, and then kick on a distortion pedal for the solo without touching your volume, which sometimes is a bit easier. But again, it's just one of those things where you need to kind of mess around with, really, and just kind of play around and find out what works for you, really. I mean, Jimmy would be on the volume control a lot. Apart from when he was doing solos, most of the time. Solos were everything on 10. Flat out. But during kind of stuff like, a little bit cleaner stuff, like, you know, if he was doing Little Wing, Wind Cries Mary, Hey Joe, sometimes, it would turn it down a bit, just to kind of clean it up. But not all amps will do that, unless you have a treble bleed in your guitar. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I say, what I normally do is run a fuzz pedal full tilt and just ride the volume for clean, overdriven, and full out lead. But I don't know. It's quite hard to. It's quite hard to, without knowing your setup. It's quite hard to know exactly what to recommend. Yeah, I mean. I would just mess around, but like I say, if you're just using normal kind of sounds, when you lower the volume, most of the time if you've got a Strat, it'll take the high end off and add bass, so it'll get kind of like dirt, like, you know, flubby and dark the lower you get the volume, unless you've got a treble bleed mod. But for Jimmy, it's all about different gain stages. There's kind of like a cleanish, an overdrive, a bit more driven, kind of overdrivey kind of sound, and a full-out singing lead sound. So it's quite hard to, I say, without knowing your exact setup, it's quite hard to answer that. I mean, like I said, I've said what I normally do, and what you see Jimmy do, he's all over the volume control. He messes around with it quite a lot, unless it's a full-out song like Voodoo Child, and he doesn't really touch it until he kind of gets to the quiet points of the songs, I'd say. So, yeah, it's a bit difficult to say without knowing your kind of exact setup, but I would just mess around with volume control more than anything else, and the selector switch between neck and bridge. Yeah, I'll go for that. So, hope that's answered your question. We'll move on to question 2 now, which is, I can't use my thumb to play chords, as I have a double jointed thumb and it causes me a lot of pain. There's no way I can bar the B and high E strings while keeping my thumb clamped down tight. Okay, right. Yeah, that's an issue. You don't want to be doing anything that causes you pain. If it's hurting, then yeah, it's not a good thing. Okay, so one thing I would recommend if you're having trouble with that is, again, not knowing particularly what kind of guitar you've got or what kind of gauge strings you've got. It's quite difficult to know. But what I would recommend, if you have got, like, you know, issues with your thumb, like, you know, like you say, if you can't get it to kind of like press down without it causing you pain, you need to ease up on things. You know, everything needs to be a bit more easier. So what I'd recommend is you get lighter strings, depending on what you're running at this point in time. If you're using gauge 8s or 9s, then, you know, disregard what I'm saying. But if you're not, if you're using it like, you know, 10s or above, then I would go lower on your string gauge, because it will make things harder. And also your action. If you can get the action lower, you'll find it a lot easier to get your thumb over and press the strings down with your thumb, and also kind of get your hand into a position where, you know, you don't have to apply a lot of pressure to kind of press those strings down. I mean, that's what I would recommend, is light strings and a low action if you're having trouble with that. That will compromise the guitar's ability to ring, but if you're running it through an amp, it shouldn't matter too much. It'll only matter really acoustically. The guitar will sound a bit kind of like, I mean, dead's not the right word, but it'll sound a bit kind of like lifeless, I'd say, until you plug it into an amp, and then it'll come back alive. But that's one thing I'd recommend, is light strings, low action, if you're having trouble with your thumb, because the higher your action is, the heavier your strings are, the more pressure they need to be pressed down. And if you, like say, you've got problems with your thumb not being able to clamp down, then that's just going to serve to aggravate that. Whereas if you've got light strings and a low action, it's going to be so easy to press down. This guitar has got ridiculously low action, and it's just, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's me like barely pressing, but I can still get the fretted notes. You know, so I would recommend that. Is there anything else I can think of? But if you are struggling with getting your thumb over top, just, I don't know, you've got to be careful with your thumb. Your thumb's kind of like, I don't know, it's difficult to say, but your thumb is kind of like, you've got to be very careful with how you use your thumb and where it goes, because, like I say, I've always said, if it's at the back of the neck, your wrist's at this kind of right angle, and that's not really the best position to be playing all the time. You can do it, no problem with it, but all the time, it's not comfy, so, yeah, I mean, that's what I would recommend. I would just recommend getting lighter strings, lower your action as far as it'll go without fretting out. If you've got like a vintage style Strat, then that might be a bit of an issue because they need to be fairly high. But light strings will compensate for that either way because they'll be so easy to press down. I don't agree with the whole, you need heavy strings to get a big sound thing because, like I said in question 1, Jimi Hendrix used to use 8s and 9s, and Jimmy Page you heard use 7s and stuff like that. So I know, Jimmy had a massive sound, and both Jimmys had massive sounds. So it's like, and Eric Clapton used really light strings, and Jeff Beck used light strings, and they all had big sounds. So yeah, just go for lighter strings. Try that, and if that's still not enough, lower the action. And if that's still not enough, send me another question, and or put a comment on this video, and try that out and put a comment on this video. When you've tried it out, because I'll come back to it. It'll pop up when I catch up on comments, and I'll see it. And if it hasn't worked, I'll try and think of something else that can try and help you out. People with a tube out there in YouTube land, could you recommend anything for this fellow to help him out? He's with issues with thumb and barring with thumb over the top. Because to play certain things, it is kind of important to have your thumb over the top. With it behind, it can cause issues. I mean, you can kind of feel everything kind of tight and in your wrist, and it's not good. Whereas if your wrists with your thumb over the top, your wrists kind of straight into the guitar neck, it's a lot more relaxed. So yes, but people with the tube, could you help us out here? Leave your comments below, and we'll see if we can help you out, sir. Okay, so I hope I answered your question as best as we can do. But like I said, leave a comment. Let me know how you get on. Lighter strings, lower action, and see how you get on with that. See if it just makes it easier for you. Because that's just, you don't want to be struggling. The guitar doesn't want to be hard work. You don't want it to fight you all the time. It's ridiculous. It wants to be enjoyable and fun and easy to play. If it's not fun and easy to play and you've got to really struggle, then it takes that kind of fun aspect away from it quite a bit, I think. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question. I say, people with a tube, chime in please below. See if we can help this fella out. And yeah, let's move on to question 3 now. Question 3 is, what's a good Marshall half stack for cheap? Marshall MG100 HDFX. You can normally pick them up really, really cheap. In England, you can kind of get them for about 200 quid with a cab and a head, 100 watt head and cab. And I think they're just brilliant. I gigged my half stack for years, and I had a double stack for years. And I just think they're brilliant. And the value for money is ridiculous. Second hand, they're so cheap. So that's what I would recommend there. The Marshall MG100 HDX. There's also, though, I have just remembered in the top of my brain box here, there's the Marshall AVT half stack. The 150H. Yes, I think that's what it is. That's an amazing amp. The acoustic simulator, not so much, but it's got a cool sound to it. But the Marshall AVT series, you can normally pick up. They're normally around the same price as an MG. I'd prefer the MG over the AVT, but the AVT is an awesome amp nonetheless, and I want one because it's got certain effects on it that I absolutely adore. Like, it's got this amazing reverb that's just massive and soundscaping. I love it to bits. But every time one goes up for sale, I don't have any money. Damn it! Anyway, one day. But yeah. Good Marshall half stack for cheap is the MG. I can imagine everyone kind of knew I was going to say that. Everyone was like, oh, predictable Dave. Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that's what I'd recommend is like either the Marshall AVT or the Marshall MG. You can't really go wrong with either. I'd say go for the old MG though, not the new MG. The new MGs are just thin and wispy and they don't really have any kind of like character and bottom end. Even with a cab, they sound really thin. So, yeah, I would go for either of them. The AVT has a little bit more flexibility effects-wise and channel-wise, because you've got 4 channels in comparison to the MG's 2. The MG technically has 4, but you can only ever use 2. So the AVT has an extra 2 channels. I mean, granted, one's an acoustic simulator, but it's still usable. So and you got like a really kind of like cool foot switch where you can kind of mess around with things. So yeah, I mean, either one of them you can't really go wrong, the AVT or the MG. But personally, if it was me, I'd look for an MG. They just I love my MGs. They're everywhere. Okay, so I hope that's answered your question. Moving on to question 4 now. I'm liking this, not having to go and turn the camera off every time I do another question, everybody. This is brill. Okay, so question 4. What are your thoughts on how different wood affects the tone of electric guitar? Do you have a favourite wood? Do I have a favourite wood? My favourite looking wood on a Strat is ash, because I think it looks wicked. And I really like the way, if you're using nitrocellulose lacquer, the way it sinks into the grain of the wood, because it's got a real kind of like wide grain. It's really cool. Also, like, flame maple on Les Pauls looks really cool. But it's just kind of more aesthetic kind of thing. But do I have any thoughts on how wood affects the tone of electric guitar? I don't really have a 5p in that, to be honest with you, because some people say it does, some people say it doesn't. At the end of the day, as long as the guitar sounds good and you can play it and it makes the sound you want to play, I couldn't give a monkey's what it's made out of. It could be made out of a cardboard box, but as long as it sounds good and it works, then I'm happy. I don't want to get down. I don't want to go down that route of it can only be made out of this wood because that's the wood that gives it the best tonal qualities and this kind of thing. I don't want to do that because I feel it kind of like detracts from the fun of just playing any guitar that comes your way. Like if somebody gave you like just a cheap composite body acoustic, and you pick it up and it's got this really kind of like awesome kind of like dead clunky sound. Well, yeah, I mean, case in point, this has got an awesome sound, but it's not a ridiculously expensive guitar, and but it's awesome, and it's got a real. It's got a really cool kind of bluesy kind of tone. So this is a guitar you could probably find in like an antique shop for like 10 quid. But that's my kind of point on it, is like, if you start kind of going down that route of things have to be a certain way, you need this kind of wood, it needs to be this, it needs to be that, I think you can kind of miss out on some fun things. Like you can get some really, really cool kind of like oddities. They're really, really cool, but if it has to be a certain thing, you'll miss them because you're not looking for them. So I don't really have an opinion. I don't have an opinion. I mean, I don't. In all honesty, it's like I don't really care what the guitar's made out of. Like I said earlier on, I don't care what it's made out of. As long as I can play it and I can get what I want out of it and it sounds good to me, that's all that matters. I really couldn't give a monkeys what it's made of as long as it's really, really good. As long as the guitar's good and it sounds good. How it affects the guitar, again, I don't really have an opinion on that either. Does maple make guitars brighter? Does rosewood make it darker? Does is ash different to poplar? And is a maple cap Les Paul different to a Les Paul without a maple cap? Like is it mahogany? Blah blah blah. I don't really have an opinion on it. I don't get really bogged down with that kind of thought process. I just kind of like, I just want to play the guitar. I don't really kind of like get stuck on that kind of like it has to be this, it has to be that, it has to be the other. As long as it does its job, I'm happy, man. So yeah, I mean that's that really. But I do love the look of certain woods. Like I said, I love the look of ash on Strats, especially Sunburst Strats. They look really, really cool, and especially like I say, if you're using nitrocellulose, it all sinks into like the wood grain. It looks really, really cool. Like some old 50s Strats look absolutely amazing. Like it's just some crazy, awesome looking patterns in the wood. It's just so cool. But again, that's all aesthetics. I mean, that's just kind of like that's what appeals like the look of. But again, like flame maple Les Pauls look really, really cool to me. But plain tops look really cool, and my favourite Les Paul look of all time is a gold top, so you can't even see the wood. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I don't really have an opinion on how different kinds of woods and how it affects the guitar. Like I say, it's just as long as it plays, really, more than anything else. As long as it plays and it does its job and it's just really good fun, that's all that matters. That is all that matters to me, definitely. I mean, people are welcome to people can shout at me all day long that this wood does this and that and the other, but at the end of the day, you've got to think you've got to think for yourself, really, and like at the end of the day, I think things like that just end up kind of distracting people from the point, which is just to make music and have fun with the guitar, instead of kind of like getting bogged down with technical aspects of it. Just sit down, have fun with it, and see what kind of sounds it makes, and go, oh, that's really cool, I like that. I mean, it's fun. It's you've got to have fun. You've got to have fun, and I think, like I say, getting bogged down with technical aspects can, I think, sometimes ruin that kind of enjoyment, so to say. So, that's my little. I don't know. It wasn't really an answer, but I don't really have an opinion. So guitars are what they are at the end of the day. As long as it's a good guitar, all's well. Okay, so moving on to question 5 now. Should you hit open strings when changing chords, and if not, how can you avoid doing so? Yeah, you can do what you want. I quite like that whole thing of hitting open chords. Like if you're, instead of kind of doing stuff like that, you can go. It creates like a cool kind of percussive thing if you kind of hit the open strings between chords. It's really cool. Sometimes it doesn't work. You've got to be aware of when it works and when it doesn't work, because sometimes it can just sound messy. But, yeah, you can hit the open strings if you want. The thing about guitar is there are no rules. There is no rule book to kind of like, to say, you can't do that. That is downright disgusting. How dare you do that to a guitar? There's no rule book to what you can and cannot do with a guitar. As long as you enjoy it, that's all that matters. Yeah, coming back to the last question about wood. As long as you enjoy the guitar and you enjoy making music and you enjoy the sound it makes, then do what you want. Play it however you want. If you want to, if you want to. Play it however you want. Play it with your teeth, whatever. I'm not going to play this with my teeth. I'll break them. But yeah, if you want to hit open strings between chords, do it. Just be, like I said, just be aware though. Sometimes it will sound a bit sloppy, but if nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Your playing doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist. In guitar playing, I don't think there is such a thing as perfect. There's always something that can be done better, so to say. It doesn't matter how great you are, that you can always do something better. So yeah, I mean, just do what feels right. That's the fundamental thing with guitar. Do what feels right. Just if it feels right, you're doing it right. Okay. You also asked, can you give me some tips on how to sound like Akira Yamaoka, from the guy who did the music for Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3, and 4, I do believe. Particularly Silent Hill 2 and 3. He's got a really distinctive sound for those games, especially Silent Hill 2. Like real distinctive guitar tones and a real distinctive kind of like melodies very distinctive kind of melodies. One thing I will say is you want to be kind of like it's not a lot of gain he uses, especially when he's doing kind of melody lines. There's not a lot of gain in there. There's a lot of it's very clean, very kind of a very kind of like direct kind of sound, and it sounds like it's position 2 on a Strat style guitar. I've seen him playing an ESP Strat, and with a humbucker in the bridge, so you know it could have been that one. I don't know, but it sounds like a position 2 on a guitar like that. But I don't really know. But you kind of, it's kind of like a mid-rangey kind of sound, but not horrendously mid-rangey. There's quite a lot of bite to it. There's some really cool solos where he's on the neck pickup of a single coil guitar, and it's just got this really bright sound, but still a lot of depth to it. Might do a video on this actually, because he's one of my favourite kind of like guitarists and kind of like, you know, like writers and stuff. Some of the instrumental stuff he writes is absolutely gorgeous. The melodies he comes out with and the way he uses kind of certain melodies behind other melodies and stuff like that, and chord progressions, it's just awesome. So I might do a video on this guy actually, because I like his playing, and I like the way they like Love Silent Hill. So, but yeah, I mean, to sound like him, you don't want a lot of gain. That is definitely one thing. It wants to be fairly clean. There's like a hint of chorus every now and again as well on his guitar tone. Not lows. It's not like saturated, but there's like this kind of like slight kind of sound. It sounds like it's position 2 on a Strat, so it's kind of like one up from a bridge position. It definitely sounds like it's out of phase. It doesn't sound like just the bridge on its own. He does use the bridge on its own and the neck pickup, but for certain things, I think he is using just that kind of out of phasey kind of sound, that kind of like position 2 Strat kind of sound. But yeah, and you also want, like, you know, reverb on there. He does use delay every now and again, but it's very subtle. Everything's really subtle with him. It's all about the piece of music. It's all about how it's, you know, the tones work perfectly to suit that piece of music that he's written. So yeah, I mean, just I'm gonna do a video on this. I'm gonna do a video on analysing his guitar tones, because they're really, really cool guitar tones. But again, keep the gain low. It wants to be about halfway on your tone control, or even like, you know, a little bit more maybe. But it never wants to be overly saturated. It's very clean, so when he plays melody lines, they really stick out. And it's quite bright, but it's more mid-range bright than treble bright, if that makes any sense. And I say there's hints of chorus on his guitar tone every now and again, but not really. You can get away without it. You don't really need it. There's certain, in the Silent Hill 2 theme, you can hear there's a slightness of chorus, like very, very tiny bit. I mean, I don't know. I'm hearing it. Maybe it's not. Maybe the guitar's double tracked. I don't actually know. But again, you could simulate that with a chorus pedal. But yeah. So that's what I would recommend. Is, like I say, keep gain low. Go for the mids. You want quite a lot of bass as well, just to kind of make it fat for when you're doing single note lines. Not too much though, so it doesn't get too flubby and too fat. It wants to be fairly warmish. You know, you want kind of like gain at kind of like 5 or 6, so 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. Mids, depending on the amp, somewhere between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And I would say bass wants to be at 12 o'clock. And treble, maybe 1, 2, if needed at all. And if you've got presence, again, same thing as a treble, don't really need to use it. And reverb, you want a fair bit of reverb on there, but not super saturated reverb. It just wants to be kind of like a nice kind of like underlying reverb that's just kind of like there, just to kind of like, you know, just warm the sound up and just give it a bit of depth. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna do a video on like I'm gonna follow it up with a video at some point, because I think it'd be really, really cool to talk about him, because like I say, the way he writes and the music he writes is really very strongly melody based, and I think that's really, really cool, and it's really awesome instrumental music, and I really love it. So yes, I might do a video on that at some point, hopefully, fingers crossed. Touch wood. Okay, you also asked what's the drum machine you use in your videos. Have I got him around? Yeah, well, the main drum machine I use in videos recently, so kind of like, you know, for intro jams and whatnot, is the inbuilt drum machine inside the Zoom G2 .1U that I've got. You know, the multi-effects unit. It's got a built-in drum machine, and that's the drum machine I use most of the time. And if I'm not using that, I'm using this, the Zoom MRT3, and this I've had this drum machine for absolutely yonks, and I love it to bits. I've used this so much, and it's been a great little learning tool, this drum machine. And this is another drum machine I've used. I think I've used this a few times in videos, but not massively loads. I kind of use this more for recording more than anything else. And it's just a really cool recording tool, because you can get some really cool. I used it on all the for the album that I did for John Frusciante, the tribute for John Frusciante. That's the drum machine I used on that for all the beats and stuff. So, and also I've used it tons, and it's just really awesome. I love it. It has got a drum machine sound. It doesn't sound like a real drum kit. It doesn't have that depth, but it has something, and I like it. I like it a lot. And it's called Keith, everybody. So let me introduce you to Keith. I don't know why it's called Keith. It's just a name that came to mind. But anyway, yeah, that's the drum machines. The drum machine I mainly use is one that's inbuilt into my Zoom G2. If I'm not using that, I'll be using the Zoom MRT3, which I adore and I love, and I got it years ago, and God, it's just ace. I'm a Zoom freak, I tell you. Okay, so yeah, I hope that's answered your question. Question 5. I'm going to move on to final question of the day now, everybody. Question 6. I'm enjoying, like I say, I am enjoying this kind of. I don't have to stop the camera. I can just kind of leave it rolling and not have to just kind of keep going over the camera and turning it off. Well, that's really cool. Okay, so question 6. How did you feel, or what did you think of John Frusciante's VPRO interview? I trust you're talking about the one where he's absolutely out of his head and looks like he's dead. Because he does. He looks absolutely terrible. First time I saw that, I was shocked. Like, beyond shocked. It was just like... It was kind of one of those kind of... You have to double take. Is that real? Is that... Eh? And the weird thing is, I saw that interview years after I got into John Frusciante. So I got into John Frusciante about 2003. Give or take. Yeah, 2003. When By the Way came out as a single. And... I saw John Frusciante more at that point. So when YouTube came about, and I was able to kind of like look up these old videos of John, and I came across that interview, the change from the By the Way Californication era John to that John, and earlier John with, you know, Mother's Milk and Blood Sugar era, is terrifying. He looks awful. He looks like a zombie. He looks like The Walking Dead. And he's just yammering on. You know, you can kind of understand a few things he's on about, but it's scary. I think he looks terrifying. And he just looks ravaged, absolutely ravaged. And his voice is like that. It sounds really gravelly, and it's just horrible. Horrible to see. I found it mega upsetting, personally, to see somebody who's, you know, indirectly, well, not indirectly, but directly had indirectly to him, but directly to me, had such an influence on me as a human being and as a guitar player. To see them in such a state like that was just like, what the hell? You know, and when he's talking about why he's using heroin and stuff like that, and there's one bit of footage where he lays down, and he might as well have not got back up. It looks like that. It looks like he's just dead. It's terrifying. It was awful. It looks horrible, and he's just out of his mind. He's totally out of his mind in that interview. You know, the way he's moving, the way he looks, the way he's like this. He just looks really, really scary. Sorry, guitar. But and then doing kind of certain songs like he does the Untitled, and does that other song that he wrote when he was really young. And on that cheap nylon string guitar, and it's just like, good God. And then his arms, you see his arms, oh my God. At some point you see his arms, and they're all abscessed, and they're just, it's just gross, absolutely gross. It's still amazing to me how he's still alive. It's absolutely amazing to me how he's still alive. I mean, I remember him saying, like, in an interview, that when he got checked into rehab, they had to remove all his teeth because he had abscesses that could have killed him. He nearly lost his arms because of the abscesses and burning his arms when he was freebasing, and he burnt his apartment down. You know, he's a very lucky fellow, and if you've read Anthony Kiedis' book, that Scar Tissue book, he's lucky as well. Especially in he had the story about Anthony Kiedis had a motorcycle crash, and his arm got pushed back into his body, and the people he crashed into took him to the hospital, and he nearly lost his arm, and John nearly lost both his arms. John nearly died a million times. Like he said, he used to have to OD to get the hit. He was that tolerant of heroin. He had to OD to get the buzz, and it's terrifying. And that interview is terrifying. It's just scary to look at. He's scary. And to see what he was after, and to see what he was before, and then see what he is in the middle of that 7-year period where he was just like that. It's just gives me shivers. It's horrible to see. I don't like it. I've watched it twice, and after the last time, I don't ever want to see it again. It's just, it'd be like constantly watching footage of, I don't know what I can relate to, but it's just horrible to have somebody who you respect and look up to, and like I say, someone who's influenced you so much and like really had a massive influence on you in certain ways of life. To see them in such a state like that, it's heartbreaking. It really is. So, and it, whether whatever John does in his life, he'll always mean the world to me because of what he's given me, and I'm sure that's the same with all you lot out there as well who love John. Regardless of what he says or what he does, his music will always mean the world to us, and what he's given us will always mean the world to us. Because I don't really like. The more I hear about him, sometimes the more I kind of don't like him as a person. He seems to be a really difficult person, a little bit arrogant sometimes. And some of the things he said about I didn't enjoy playing live and this, that and the other, and it's just like, come off it, John. You just, who are you lying to here? But again, I was speaking about this the other day, and just saying because he's a genius and he is self-destructive, John is. He's probably doing it just to push everything away. People like that tend to kind of have this weird self-destructive thing where they like to push things away. So, it wouldn't surprise me if he's doing it just as it's like a coping mechanism almost. But that, coming back to that VPRO interview, it's just horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I don't like seeing that kind of thing. It's very upsetting, and it's just it's just really uncomfortable, and it just makes me shudder. It gives me the shivers to see something like that. So, it's not John Frusciante. It's not John. It wasn't John Frusciante to me. That isn't. John Frusciante was before and after that. That kind of period is something else. It doesn't even. He doesn't even look human. He just. It's horrific how he looks. Absolutely horrific. As I say. Yeah, horrible. Anyway, but yes. Okay, so that's the final question of the day, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed this Q&A. Unedited. First time doing a Q&A all the way through without it being kind of have to be edited together. Because on the other camera I used to use, I used to have to kind of do a question and then stop the camera and then start the camera again. Because it would only record for about 8 minutes. Whereas Mr. Zoom here will record for about an hour, as is. I have a tiny memory card in it, but it records for about an hour straight without me having to edit it, without to stop it, so to say. So I like that. I really like the ability to do a video now where I don't have to swap. I can do things more on camera than that's a big plane. I don't know if you can hear that. It's very low, But I like the idea of being able to do things on camera and not edit so much, because I always like to, you know, I never really did that much kind of editing really, because that's not really where I like to do videos. I like to do things kind of like seamlessly. I like things kind of like to flow. And I think if you kind of like get held up on that kind of thing, it can kind of disrupt that sometimes. So the ability to kind of like just press record and yammer on for an hour or so is really cool. So I'm loving it right now. So, what do you think of a room, everybody? By the way, I've edited things slightly just for ease of use with the new camera and also some other things. And I've got a lapel mic finally, but it's not. I ain't got it on just now because I haven't tested it yet. So we'll be doing that soon. And yes. So yeah. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this Q&A. I hope I've answered your questions okay, everybody. If I haven't, like I said, you can come around and beat me with a stick. No, you can't. I will never tell you where I live. Anyway. Yeah, anyway. I hope I've answered your questions okay. And have a great morning, afternoon, good evening, everybody. Goodbye now.